Thanks a lot, dearest Ayal. And thanks a lot for everybody to be here today. So I will try to get to the point quickly, and I will start sharing my screen now to share my presentation. Just a second, of course. Hopefully this is this one. Let's go. Voila. Do you see it? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So, let's start. We are speaking now from a very known agency, known by all scientists in Europe and elsewhere in the world, more and more. ERC. ERC is part of the Horizon Europe Framework Program, meaning the program financed by EU for all types of scientific projects. ERC has a growing part in the budget of the European Europe because quickly we have understood that it was seen as crucial by most scientists. Why is it so? It is due to the fact that the ERC is a specific agency, a specific funding body, which is designed by scientists, led by scientists, for scientists. And we do not have any preset priorities. We have a bottom-up approach. It is up to the scientist to propose the project of his or her dreams, and we assess it. If it's really groundbreaking or at least novel in some of its aspects, then we are very, very keen on funding it. As I said, the specificity of the ERC, it is led by scientists, and here you can see the current top-notch researchers who are designing the strategies of the European Research Council. These are members of the Scientific Council, and our president is Maria Leptin. She's a biologist, and you can see that we are covering all domains of science thanks to these 22 scientists leading our destiny.
Lionel?
Despite the fact that the ERC is not really aiming to do patents, we have more patents than any other agency in the EU framework programs. Why is it so? It's because, as I said before, we are in a bottom-up approach. We leave you choosing the subject of your project, and this leads to far more results than when we are forcing you to go in one direction or the other. So let's continue. You can see here the evaluation panel structure, the one that will be set from 2024 onwards. And I will immediately speak about the main change for social anthropology and anthropology as a whole. You notice that we are the third domain, which is social science and humanities. And in this domain, you have three panels in which anthropology is usually feeling quite comfortable. You have SH3, SH5, and no SH8. I will explain the situation as it is until 2023, and then I will go to 2024. In 2023, anthropology is distributed in between SH3 and SH5. You can see, for example, that it is social anthropology is in descriptors of SH3, and we have the descriptor SH37 and SH310, which group some of the main descriptors used by anthropologists, but of course not only. Anthropologists can find themselves in more or less all descriptors depending on their own specialty. You can notice as well that cultural studies is mostly in SH5 panel, and you can see in green for the SH5 panel and in yellow for the SH3 panel all the descriptors that will be transferred to SH8 in 2024. So here you have the new SH3 panel, and you can notice that its new name, the social worlds and its interaction, does not comprehend anymore social anthropology. And SH5 becomes text and concepts and does not understand at all cultural studies. On the opposite, SH8, studies of cultures and art, comprehends as first main descriptor social anthropology, studies of culture, studies of art, and if you look the sub-descriptors, you fully understand that no, most of anthropology is reunited in the SH8 panel. So from 2024 onward, most of the proposals submitted by anthropologists will certainly go to SH8. Of course, we will answer to the question later, I suppose. Of course, if you have a project which is mostly on social aspect of teaching, anthropology of education, and so on, you can still wonder where to go. The same is true if you have a project which is in between anthropology and, for example, paleography and so on. But this is not really important here. You can see that for most of you, SH8 will be the new home. Please note that the budget is distributed among the scientific panels as a function of demand. So even if you have an incredible number of anthropologists applying to SH8, the budget of SH8 will be bigger than it was in the past. Of course, it's a new panel, so it's not that much of a problem. But the budget is distributed on demand, which is yes. The panel descriptors do not represent ERC scientific priorities. So even if you don't find yourself in the descriptors of SH3, SH5, SH2, SH8, that's not of a problem. We always try at the ERC, if you don't find the best possible panel, we try to help you if needed. Well, here we have a little example of one of the projects that was funded in Starting Grant 2020 in SH3, but I will not go in detail. We have the chance to have various ERC grantees with us, and they will probably speak a bit of their project. So just to know that, for example, one of the trends we have in anthropological proposals is the relationship between multi-species. We have more and more projects of that kind, among, of course, many others. Why should you apply? Well, ERC is becoming one of the most prestigious agencies in the world. You have some universities, for example, in France, which are distinguishing among themselves by the number of ERC grants received. And of course, if you receive an ERC grant, this allows you to design your own team and to get financial autonomy and, of course, independence. And I think these are really, well, pretty nice features for starting a scientific career or to consolidating it. If you are not happy with your host institution, you can also choose another host institution in Europe or associated country. It means that the grants are fully portable, and this has helped in the past a lot of PIs to negotiate at best with the host institution for good working conditions for the team, for example. You have various ERC grant schemes. Here are the most known ones. The starting grant for starters, meaning researchers who have 2 to 7 years after PhD, and the grant can go up to 1.5 million for 5 years. Consolidators, 7 to 12 years after PhD, a grant up to 2 million for 5 years. Advanced grant for the most senior researchers. They should have a track record of significant research achievement in the last 10 years, and the grant is up to 2.5 million for 5 years. Of course, they have more than 12 years after PhD. And, well, the one which is really keen to my heart is Synergy, which groups 2 to 4 principal investigators, has a budget which can go up to 10 million euro for 6 years, and it is basically to foster interdisciplinarity between domains or disciplines. So the project should really show its added value by grouping different research teams together. It's not one of these Horizon Europe projects where you gather 10 teams in order to get the money. It is here which teams are chosen to work really together that will decide the ERC to fund you or not. So it's really the added value of the synergy that counts. And then you have proof of concept, but this is a special little call which is reserved for ERC grantees. For example, if you have made an innovation that could be marketable, this allows you to make kind of survey in order to grasp at best if it's interesting or not to make it commercial. We have few changes in the work program 2024. And it is important to know for the applicants, that's why I put it as a priority, that there is a new PhD eligibility reference date rule. The reference date towards the calculation of the eligibility period shall be the certified date of the successful defense. Beforehand, it was the date of the award of the PhD. Now it is the defense date. It is to reflect the real academic age instead of the administrative age of the PI. And also, it brings clarity to the applicant. So if the PhD certificate does not show defense date, the candidate has to ask for written confirmation from the awarding institution. This is important to mention because still a lot of applicants believe that it is the awards date that counts, and this will be a real pity because it leads to ineligibility. Speaking about eligibility, so you have seen that, for example, starting grant is from 2 to 7 years after the defense of the PhD, but of course you can extend this eligibility window. For example, maternity leave, it means 18 months of extension for each child born before or after the date of the successful defense of the PhD degree. Paternity leave, then it's documented time taken for each child. Long-term illness, clinical training, as well as national service, of course. All this should be duly documented, justified. And we have two new categories for extensions. We are in weird era, so we have to adapt. Documented times of PI's inability to work due to natural disaster or for seeking asylum. Especially for the 2024 calls, these are the eligibility period. For starting grant, the successful defense of the first PhD should be between 1st January 2017 and 31st December 2021 inclusive. For the consolidators, it is between 1st January 2012 and 31st December 2016 inclusive. For advanced and synergy grant, there is no specific criteria. but I know that a lot of starting grant plausible applicants are listening to us, so that's why it is important to take note of this, with, of course, all the conditions that allow for an extension of these eligibility periods. For 3 years now, we have additional funding available, which are up to 1 million euro for starting, consolidator, and advance, and up to 4 million euro for a synergy project. What are they aiming for? These additional funding can be claimed if you have to cover startup costs for PIs moving to the EU or an associate country from elsewhere as a consequence of receiving the ERC grant. It can be also due to the purchase of major equipment and or access to large facilities, even if these B and C reasons are more for PE and LS. For example, access to the CERN facilities for physicists, or the purchase of a scanner, for example, for a medical team in LS. But the reason D is of interest for all scientists working in social sciences, especially for anthropologists. You can claim this additional funding for fieldwork costs, for example. These are not including the salaries of the people, which have to be put on the normal budget, but for example, accommodation, traveling, adaptation material on the fieldwork and so on, this can be counted in this additional funding, which is increasing and sometimes more than slightly the project budget. Also knowing that this additional funding is not subject to pro rata temporis reduction for projects of shorter duration. Of course, if you are a consolidator and you have a project of up to 2 million euro for 5 years, but you want to do a 4-year project, it will mean a maximum budget of 1.6 million euro. But the additional funding money is not linked with the time. Our evaluation for 15 years is based on excellence, not on geopolitical or geographical criteria, but on the scientific excellence of both the research project and the PI. The project should be of groundbreaking nature, but okay, be fair, we do not ask you to change the paradigm of anthropology at each time you do an ERC project. We just want to find something which is novel, that can nourish the discipline, bring something new to the discipline, without being of groundbreaking nature, but it should be innovative. It should have a scientific impact, and the scientific approach could also bring new elements that will be of help for future anthropologists, for example. The PI should show evidence of intellectual capacity, creativity, and commitment. For example, for starting grant, we ask the PIs to have published without the supervisor, or as at a prominent place if it's a journal article, meaning the first one. And we like also to see the thesis published, of course, in starting grants, in addition to possibly articles or other monographs. The ERC funds frontier research. It means that we are funding proposals introducing unconventional, innovative approaches and scientific inventions. It means that we do not make any distinction between applied and basic sciences. Of course, such a distinction is more used in hard sciences than in social or science or humanities. Nevertheless, you should know that we are aiming to find and found unconventional projects. Our evaluation process is done in 2 steps. Why? It's because we are receiving a lot of application and we have to divide a bit the work. So at step 1, you can only send a synopsis, extended synopsis of your research, as well as your CV, which is called the Part B1, and it is at first assessed remotely by panel members. Then there is a panel meeting in which they discuss each and every proposal that has been submitted using their remote reviews and defining what are the ins and outs of each and every proposal. This leads to a rejection of proposals, which are then announced to the unsuccessful candidates, and they receive all the individual reviews made by the reviewers. It can lead, of course, for proposals selected for step 2, and these PI just receive a letter saying that they are selected for step 2. At step 2, the panel members have access to the whole proposal, so the Part B1, as well as the complete project, the calendar, the composition of the team, the budget, and they have, at the end of step 1, nominated external reviewers who are specialists in the fields of each and every proposal to make sure that their own expertise is complemented by the one of real expert in the disciplines explored by each and every project. There is a second panel meeting with interviews of the PIs. The interviewees are online, and this is important to know in order to prepare at best. Starting Grant, Consolidator, and Advanced Grant have an interview online. For Synergy, it's a bit different because there are various PIs in a Synergy project, and they are still invited to go to Brussels. It's because it's far more easier to have the whole team in front of the panel meeting. In the end of this step 2 panel meeting, there are A proposals and B proposals. The A's are divided into 2 different quality of A's. You have the immediately funded A's and the fundable A's, meaning that the main part of the A's is immediately funded by the ERC, and some of the A's which are not immediately funded are put on the reserve list. They could be paid by additional money received from associated countries or by money unused by other panels. And then you have the B project, which are rejected, but they have already managed to get to step 2, meaning that they can reapply the following year without any problem. I forgot to mention that projects which are flagged B and C at step 1 cannot resubmit the following year, but for the B1 2 years after, and for the C1s 3 years after. So that's why that when you prepare your project, you have really to take care of everything, not to be forced to wait for 2 or 3 years in order to resubmit. It's important to note that anyone from anywhere in the world can apply. So we have opportunities for researchers outside EU associated countries. There is the startup funding additional money, as mentioned a bit earlier, and the grantees can keep their affiliation with their home institution since they are obliged to spend 50% of their time in Europe or associated country. But of course, they can spend the rest of the time in their previous alma mater. So we are not trying to drain people out of their country. We just want to offer possibilities to better collaborations, keeping your own academic roots. The team members can be based outside Europe, and the grantees can move within Europe with the grant, of course. Okay, this I already spoken, though I can switch. Okay, there is a novelty in the work program 2024. It is that whatever the number of proposals passing to step 12, whatever the number of proposals received at step 1, there will be a cap of the number of interviews to be done at step 2. So at most 44 proposals for each panel can be passed to step 2 of the evaluation. This is a practical limit. More than 44 interviews per week, it's really exhausting for the panel members. And so we came to this conclusion. And this has a consequence. There is a new scoring introduced at step 1. You have, along with the A, the B, and the C, the A not invited. So the A not invited is of excellent quality, but cannot be ranged among the 44 selected for interview. It means that you can resubmit the following year. And that's already far better than having a B or a C. And we are sorry, but we are receiving so many proposals to review that at some moment we have human limits. We have to cope with the fact that we have to do this still not with AI, but with real human beings. And it's better not to cause an extreme fatigue among them, because we want them to come back later. So, summary of novelties for the ERC Work Program 2024. The most important is this 44 proposal in step 2. The fact as well, but it was also already implemented, it is just now officialized, the fact that we do not want to make any prescription on the PI profile. We encourage short narrative to explain all the inflection points in your scientific career. And this is a novelty. We don't impose a kind of CV template. We allow you to tell your own story, in a sense. For the Advanced Grant 24, you should know that there will be not anymore various payment along the year, along the 5 years of most of the project. It will be a lump sum pilot. So we will do a one amount payment based on the work done, not on the success of the project. And as you know, we have a new panel, your panel, the SH8 panel. So to submit an ERC proposal, first of all, like our ERC grantees present in this room, they had a very nice and excellent idea. They have selected first the call, then they have selected the domain, the descriptors. They have written the part B1 and B2. It's very important that you get acquainted with the system, that you prepare all far in advance, but this is, I think, an advice you can give for every type of project. And you should know, this is crucial, that what is really important for an ERC project is to prepare really well the extended synopsis, the part B1. If you write a marvelous part B2, a marvelous project, but that its extended synopsis is not really worked out, there is not enough element to assess the feasibility of the project, then that's a pity. But since you are evaluated at step 1 on your extended synopsis, panel members will never see this marvelous complete project, because they will never see the part B2. That's why we ask you to really take care of this part B1 of this extended synopsis. Finally, you should know that choosing the right panel is really important, but that if you have a project of interdisciplinary nature, for example, a project bringing together anthropology and genetics, why not? Then you can propose a main panel and a secondary panel. The secondary panel will be obliged to deliver one review at least, sometimes two, to the main, most of the time two, by the way, nowadays, to the main panel, in order to make sure that we assess at best all the parts of the proposals. Of course, if by choosing your panel you make a clear mistake, then we always try to see where is the best panel for your proposal. In the case of an obvious mistake, we discuss among panel coordinators and among panel chairs, and if the panel chairs both agree that the proposal should be better located in another panel than the current one, then the proposal may be transferred. But we do this only if we do not have a single doubt about the legitimacy of this decision. We always do this only in the interest of the applicant. And we try to keep this exceptional. Also, you should know that on the cover page of the Part B1, when you write your project, you can always justify why you want your project to be in that panel and not in that panel. If we seize this, then there is no possible transfer because we respect the willingness of the applicant. But if there is nothing written on the cover and that we have the feeling that the PI made an obvious mistake, then we ask for transfer in the interest of the application of the applicant. I think it's important to notice this because some people sometimes are a bit surprised to see that they have not been, for example, evaluated in SH3, but in SH5. But they should know that it is because the SH3 and the SH5 panel chairs, as well as SH3 and SH5 panel coordinators, have all discussed together and got to the conclusion it was far better for the proposal to be in SH5. So I hope this clarifies an issue that comes back quite regularly. Why have I been evaluated in another panel than the panel of my own choice? Yeah, some people also choose a panel strategically in order to increase chances of success. Well, they should know that this is not the best possible strategy and that we have enough money for everyone, by the way. Questions to ask yourself when you're writing your proposal. First, is my project new, innovative, bringing in new solutions or theories? Does it go substantially beyond the state of the art? Why is my project important? Think big, please. Also, because normally there are 5 years projects, so you have to be ambitious to fill these 5 years with relevant work packages, relevant sub-projects. How can I support my case? Have I proven the project's feasibility? Is it feasible now? Is it timely? Why wasn't it done in the past? What's the risk? Have I proposed alternatives? This is very important to propose mitigation strategies in case of issues. I can take a very recent case. We have various projects in anthropology that were dealing with Ukraine and Russia or Russia. And some of these projects have been obliged to totally rewrite the project due to the current geopolitical situation in these countries. And of course, if you have a mitigation strategies foreseen from the very beginning, it may help. Also, it may help to convince panel members that your project is feasible. For example, I don't know, scheduling a fieldwork in Yemen currently may be considered dangerous for the postdocs or even for the PhD students. So you have to really show that you take care of all aspects of your fieldworks, for example. We should not endanger either the populations or the team. And all this has to be taken into account because all this will be seen and evaluated by panel members. For the PI, why am I the right person to carry it out? Know your competitors and know as well that if you are proposing a project about anthropology and linguistics, you have to really show that you have taken care also of the linguistic part and that you have, for example, hired an expert in linguistics in your project, since you do not have yourself the competence to deal with this aspect of your project. Am I able to work independently and to manage a 5 years project with a substantial budget? Am I internationally competitive? Of course, this at starting grant, it's not really the most important questions. It's more important to show that you are able to publish independently. Have I shown my scientific capacity in my CV? Well, that's important, of course, to really think about the CV. And this is true for the CV as well as for the content of the proposal. Please do not hesitate to show it to colleagues, to exchange, to discuss each aspect and so on. It's important to share in order to make sure that you are doing something right. Some hints and tips, other ones. Part B1, find the right balance. This I have already told more or less, I don't want to come back on it. Please, in the part B2, do not repeat the synopsis. Use the complete project in order to expand, not limit yourself to what was written already at the part B1. Panel members do not like to read twice the same, in a sense. A bit is okay, but too long is... really be complete about the methodology and the work plan. And you have to justify each and every requested resource. A budget which is not justified will be cut. So each item has to be defined and explained. If it's not scientifically relevant, it will be cut, and this will be at the expense of the whole project. That's why each item in the budget has to be carefully thought out and explained. Voila. Okay. Don't forget to ask for funding for open access. Open access in Horizon Europe is obligatory, and all these costs are eligible. So don't forget to think about the open access costs for your publications. I've been invited for step 2, for the interview, and know what? Have clear and representative slides and focus on science. Don't try to make a business presentation. You are talking to peers, to scientists. Get panel interested in your ideas and proposal. Present and defend your ideas. Don't over-explain your CV. Focus on the project mostly. And please don't show any arrogance. I know that some companies outside are advising PIs to show that they are really assertive, proactive, whatever. And sometimes this is confused with arrogance, either by the PI or by the panel members. Well, it's not important to know who sees this as arrogance, but it doesn't pay off. It's not advice at all. You have to show that you are really master each aspect of your project without any arrogance, not being humble. You have to show why it is quite novel, but please keep calm and everything will go fine. Typical reason for rejection: the scope is too narrow or too broad. It's incremental. There is nothing novel. It is just doing what others have done in the past or what you have already done in the past. It's not a collaborative project, so there are no several PIs. You can have, of course, postdocs, you can have collaborators, but it's not a combination of various teams. The work plan is not detailed enough or unclear, or there is an insufficient risk management. For the PI, there is an insufficient track record or insufficient potential for independence. Please know that from 2024, it has been formally set in stone that the research project is far more important in the assessment than the PI profile. We really try to put the focus on the novelty of the project, just for you to know. Here is the 2024 call calendar. You noticed that starting grant 2024, well, the deadline is pretty close. Don't try to make a starting run project in 13 days. I would advise more 6 months to 1 year time in order to be really ready in all of its aspects. Also knowing that if you do something in hast, you could have to wait for 2 or 3 years before being able to resubmit, because the project will be seen as not really well finalized by the panel. Consolidator, the deadline is the 12th of December. Advanced grant, well, plenty of time to do that one. The deadline is 29th of August 2024. And for Synergy, it's very close too, but Synergy grant require even more time to prepare. So of course, I do not expect Synergy grant PIs to start now, but the deadline is the 8th of November. And please know that for the EU, a deadline is not at midnight, the day of the deadline, but at 5 p.m. This can be a surprise for some of you. And please do not submit at the last minute, because of course everybody does this and then the server is totally overblocked. Okay. Of course, to prepare your proposals, get information, and our website is the main source of information. Register early, make use of the help tools and call documents, read the guidelines carefully, follow the formatting rules and page limit. A submitted proposal can be revised until the call deadline by submitting a new version and overwriting the previous one. So even if your project is not yet finalized, put it already in the server to be sure that you're right on time. Additional links, well, everything is anyway on our website. The ERC dashboard can be useful to access data on previous ERC grants and proposals. And on YouTube, we have a video which are done by ERC staff in order to help plausible future applicants to design and prepare at best an ERC grant. So please, you have a ERC channel and you can explore this. It's nice, it's fun and useful. Thanks a million.
Their presentations, and this is going to be a kind of very informal presentation, so feel free to type your questions to the chat box, to the Q&A function, and be ready to hear some great tips from our successful grantees, and congratulations to all of you. Shall we start with Madeline?
Okay. Hello, do you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Hi, everybody, and thank you for the invitation. And I think, I don't know if I will take 10 minutes or even something less to leave the floor to the others and to the Q&A, which I think is maybe the most important part. Just maybe some suggestion. I don't have any slide to share. Just I think it's important to know to arrive at the end of the application. I heard so many people that stop before, that don't arrive to the final point of applying, and thinking I'm not at the level, I don't have the nicest very nice idea, I will not be able to. And I think we should all need to make an effort to arrive at the end. Apply, make this effort, which is a big effort. It's a bunch of work, but it's feasible. So this is one thing. The second one is, which I think it's important, is to maybe two things it's important to say, to share. One is that I think it's important that the project we propose has any connection with the reality of our world, which doesn't mean a concrete application, because ERC found poor research, but that has a connection with what the European Parliament is discussing, which is the political situation we are living. These are elements that make that can be valuable for a proposal. And another thing concerning the anthropology perspective is to explain every and each single step very well. To me, the person who helped me suggested me to make as if it was a scenography of a movie, really explaining everything. What is a diary, a notebook, how you take an interview, how you make dialogue, the interview with the notebook. What is ethnography for a social anthropology is something that we teach to our students. So we need to really explain it in detail to the panel members, because if they are not specialists in anthropology, and they could also be not all anthropologists, they could not have it very, very clear as it needs to be, to really be able to evaluate properly an anthropological proposal. Another thing that was very important for me was really to speak and exchange with a lot of person, both scholar and colleagues of mine and friends at every level. I shared my idea of project with students younger than me, much younger, as well as old professor retired. Okay, without any I mean, I wrote mail and I asked people to have time, take time to have a Zoom with me or have a beer if they were near me, and just discuss, because every person can give an advice that can be useful and can help you to focus at the end in those few sentences that you need to really make it clear. Because as Lionel said in the presentation, the extended synopsis is really probably the most important part, and it's only 1 page, 1.5, and you need to write everything there. There is to be really all the development of the project and the idea in there, and it's very short. So you need to have this very, very clear in mind, and so more you speak about it, more you share about it, the better it will come out in writing. I don't know if I'm already done in 10 minutes, but I think I can leave it to Ella and Tessa, and I'm here after for a Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'm sure that we will have many questions in the Q&A, and thanks for giving this brief but very insightful tips with talk with us. And Tessa.
Yes, hi, thank you, Hayal, for chairing the session, of course, for the others for inviting me to be here. I think a lot of my comments will be very similar to what was already said, so my apologies for the repetition. But I kind of thought of a few things that I guess I've learned in this process of applying for this grant. And I think, so it's kind of words of advice, but it's also based on parts that I found very difficult, and that maybe you will experience as well. So I think the first thing is really plan ahead. So when I knew that last year was my last opportunity to apply, I really thought, okay, the deadline is in October. What am I doing in August and September? And is there a way for me to clear my schedule? Because for me, at least, writing this project really created, and I need a lot of headspace, a lot of time to really think about the project. And I knew, but this is my writing style, and we all have our own ways of doing this, that I can't write a proposal if I only have every Friday morning. Like, I need a few days and weeks to really sit and write it. So I was in a very fortunate position that I was able to do. Of course, I had some things going on, but I had the time before the deadline. So if you don't have that time, ensure you have it even before the summer holidays. I would advise you not to work during the summer holidays, but this is a personal choice. But think a little bit ahead of time. If you know the deadline is then, when are you going to write the proposal? And that really helped me to already kind of structure the process. The second difficulty I found is that this was my first time writing a proposal that included various team members. I was always very used to writing just something for myself. And now this was a much bigger project, and I approached it as a puzzle because I like puzzles, but also because I kept thinking about, okay, how does that work package or sub project, how does that relate to that? How does that relate to that? And it requires, at least I experienced this as an extra level of thinking, as a different way of approaching the project and the material. So as well, bear that in mind, that if you haven't written a project like this before, a proposal like this before, that it takes a different level of thinking than just applying for a proposal where it's just about yourself. And in that process, I really thought a lot about what I want this team to look like. So for example, in my project, I have 3 PhDs and I don't have a postdoc. This was also for budget reasons, but it was also because I thought I really want to create a team of 3 people that work very closely together. And if you have a PhD for 4 years, 5 years, and a postdoc for 1 year, it will be much more difficult to kind of create that energy of being a team. So I purposely focused on only including PhD researchers and not a postdoc, for example. So this was a part of the puzzle, both kind of practically, but also conceptually. And it required a lot of time for me to think about that. And I think this was also mentioned by Lionel, but because it's a bit of a puzzle, it's good to think that everything that you mention at one point has to come back somewhere else. So if you say, for example, I have in my project that I want to create a podcast, as a kind of a form of academic, as a method, but also as a form of dissemination. This then has to come back in your budget and has to come back in your method. So if you mention something at one point, it has to, like, the puzzle connections really have to click, so that it's not that they read something in one page and then they don't hear it back later. Then this creates questions. Well, what is she going to do with this? How does that fit in the total? So really take the time to really ensure that all the dots are connected in a certain way. This is something that I spent also a lot of time with, particularly towards the end when the proposal was quite finished, looking, okay, if I mention this there, does it come back there, and making the connections. And I guess my last point of feedback, and then I'll hand over, is definitely, I think writing this proposal is eventually a team effort, even though, you're the candidate PI and it's your brain doing the work. I received a tremendous amount of support from my colleagues, my friends, my husband, who read my proposal. I pitched my proposal to as many people as possible outside my discipline. And this was really, really helpful, that I had people from anthropology department, but also non-anthropologists, from law, from humanities, even from, biomedical sciences, who can they understand my idea? Can I explain to them in a few sentences what this project is about? And this was really, really helpful, both in writing the proposal, but also with doing mock interviews. And this would be my second: have mock interviews. Prepare your interview as much as possible, so that at the moment of the interview, it comes very naturally for you to kind of talk about your proposal. And then my very, very last point in terms of feedback from peers is, there are certain moments where feedback is the most useful. And I remember somewhere mid-September, I had the first kind of rough draft of my proposal. It still needed a lot of work, but there was a solid something there. And I remember I had a feedback session with about 10 colleagues who gave me all their input on this proposal. And this was a really, really difficult session. And I left feeling like, this is never gonna, but it was at the perfect timing, because I had enough on paper that they could comment on, but I also still had enough time to really incorporate the feedback and to take it in a particular direction. So I wouldn't share a draft when it's completely polished, because then you don't have time to incorporate the feedback. But I also wouldn't share a draft if you don't really have your ideas formulated on paper yet. So there's this kind of a moment where feedback, I think, is the most productive. And it was a very intense session for me to get all this feedback of 10 different colleagues saying also very different things, but it came actually at a perfect moment. So also think about this ahead of time. When are you going to ask for feedback, so that it's the most useful? But definitely, to kind of finalize, definitely ask for help from colleagues and from friends, because one thing that you might think is very logical and you understand what it means might be not logical or illogical for somebody else. So I hope that's helpful, and I wish everyone the best of luck as well with writing their proposals. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tessa, and thanks for reminding that actually applying to these grants are collective effort. And Elżbieta.
Hi, thank you. I more or less will agree with my colleagues, like to mention that it's a collective effort was to be my first point. So I will agree with that. One thing that I wanted to say perhaps is I feel there is such a aura and magical feeling around ERC as if it was, it is wonderful. It's a great opportunity. But for instance, if we look at the success rate, it is actually quite often higher success rate than in any other funding calls, or even often our national funding calls. So I would like you to give you courage to give a try. It's really possible. I applied, I'm now at Lund, but I applied in Slovakia with zero institutional support. I did everything by myself, and but then I looked for opportunities outside of my institution to ask for everyone who would listen to help me or to sign up for events like this or other workshops. But I think it's very important to surround yourself with people who are knowledgeable, who are outside of our discipline and can help, and listen to the feedback. For instance, I got feedback at some point that what I wrote is not good enough, and in a month I will not fix it. And I listened to that advice, and I didn't apply on that year, and I applied next year, and I got it in the first try. And I see what a difference is between what I thought was good and what won the grant. So it's very important to listen to the feedback and take it on. At the same time, I know that there is this, and I hear that a lot, like within questions here, oh, is it my last chance, as if after, and now I was thinking in the same way, oh my God, it's my last chance in the starting grant. And today I'm thinking, why was I trapped in this idea? I could get 2 million with this project instead of 1.5. I don't know what's with this notion that the life ends after the bloody 7 years. Yeah, so it's very, very interesting. Like, I think if the project is good, also there's another obsession that we have is about panels. I went to SH3. I made my decision last minute, literally last minute, like, this one, which one do I select? Go. To this day, I don't remember which panel it is. I had to Google it now. I think if the project is good, it will speak to many disciplines. And I think there is a danger in anthropology, because this is a like anthropological meeting here, that we think of our discipline in some exceptional way. There's this exceptionalism in our discipline. In politics, it's a dangerous way of thinking, and it should be in science as well. So I feel I would have a trust that there are smart people on that panel who understand that fieldwork is also a method, and they will not cancel us just because we want to do ethnographic research. But the idea has to be there, and it has to be presented very well, because I think, as Lionel said, those people read so much, so many proposals, so many topics, that you have to present it clearly. And as someone who is born in Eastern Europe and applied in Eastern Europe, I know that there is in that circle a lot of worry that there is a bias against Eastern Europeans. And even when I got my ERC, I've heard that, oh, it's because you have PhD from Cambridge. But I got it 12 years ago. If I hadn't done anything in between, who cares where I got it? And also my colleague who was fascinated with this issue. And when I was applying, I applied in sociology department with people who love quantity method. So he went through all proper Excel spreadsheets he could get, like statistics from, and it shows there is no bias against Eastern Europeans. If anything, we get a little bit of push to get at least to the second round. And he found that his statistical data showed that it was actually other way around. Especially for those in that part of the world, I would say, don't worry, don't stress about it. And every CV, I would think, can be, you can always find something in your biography, in your experiences, that you can present as important. But I don't think, and especially now after those changes, CV is something that should hold you back and you're worried about your proposal. These are my 5 cents. That I think so much has been said already. So I will be happy to listen to questions and answers.
Thank you very much, Alvita, and thank you for underlining that we are, as anthropologists, not exceptional, although, yeah, we feel a bit that we are exceptional. But before opening the floor for the Q&A, I just want to turn back to Leona to pick up, to ask a question about what, as Beata just raised, about the kind of diversity of the grantees. Leona, you mentioned that you focus on the excellence, not the location of the applicants, but also as she mentioned that, for instance, when applying in Slovakia, there were less institutional support, right, which eventually affect the kind of success rates of the of the candidates, right? So what do you think can ERC do to kind of demystify the process? Or as an EASA, what kind of things that we can do to make the process more accessible to to people based in different institutions with different resources?
Well, in fact, the ERC is, of course, aware of the fact that the rate of success from the so-called Eastern countries, which is already a pretty outdated calling, there are still room for improvement, of course, for this rate of success. And the ERC itself cannot do a lot. I mean, we are doing a lot of our meetings in these countries. Our presidents went regularly to all countries that have a low rate of success, because in fact the rules of the game have to be improved in the countries. They are coming from very different academic traditions, and of course the ERC, like the EU framework program, are designed in, I would say, broadly said, Western academic traditions, and there is a cost to be really in the game. On the other side, we are seeing improvements, and as mentioned by Elisabetta, the fact that you have people going to Western universities, host institutions, coming back to their country, favor this brassage, this mélange, this exchanges, and I think that more and more academia are open to support the ERC. At the very beginning, we had even the problem that some host institutions were not aware at all how to help the applicants. So now I think we have seen a lot of improvement in this way to support the candidates. And I can assure you that we are really pleased to see that the game is more and more understood by the countries, and that people have support. But it is still true that compared, for example, to the support that can be given in Germany, Netherlands, UK, and others. UK is coming back in the game, by the way. There's still room for improvement. We try to foster this. We hire panel members from these countries, and all of them are also convinced that we have just to stick to excellence, but that we should really provide opportunities to this researcher to to be entitled to show that they are as excellent as others. That's what I can say. It's a very delicate issue because the ERC in itself is a small agency. We are 500 staff, and it's difficult for us to change something. We are doing our best, and the president of the Scientific Council and Scientific Council members are really trying to push for changes in all countries for which we have a low rate of success. And it's a kind of scientific diplomacy in a sense. Voila, I hope that I answered a bit.
Yeah. But thank you very much reflecting on that. And I think that's a conversation that we will continue having in the future in a productive way, hopefully. Ella, do you have something to add on that?
I think with the success rate of the East, like, for instance, I was the second Slovak ERC grant ever and first in 10 years. But I hadn't known anyone before me who would apply from Slovakia. It's so simple. If people don't apply, they cannot succeed. At the same time, it was having working experience from UK or Ireland or other places, even Poland. I knew that Slovakia offers nothing, and I knew what to ask for. I had so I think there is also an issue of holding our institutions accountable for the support they can offer. And the thing that is important is that I actually think ERC has done some efforts. For instance, I know there are some grants for countries who do not perform well enough, that if you are from Romania, Slovakia, I don't know all of them, Lionel might know better, you can apply for a fund to come to me, and welcome everybody, to get a support in learning how to write this, to get a feedback, to come for a month. There are some opportunities also your countries can offer that. So there are options now, and I think it's good to look for them. To find those opportunities, or you can use other national funding, for networking or something to get some know-how how to do it.
Perfect. Any other questions for our presenters?
May I ask a question to our ERC grantees? How do you find the opportunity to read the individual assessment report written by the panel members? Are they useful? Have you seen some ideas or recommendations that you could take into account? Because that's really a big behavior commitment of the ERC to allow PI to get access to the reviews written on their project. Most of the funding body do not do that, and we are trying to allow you to get to know what was written about the project and to understand the decision. Please.
I think when you win a grant, you are so happy that reading the review is like, okay, like it's a different way. You look with a different lens, with different glasses when you win and when you lose. But I think in both cases, I found the reviews, I don't know, I got really loads, like a lot of people contributed. And they all had the same comment, which I thought was good. Like, okay, if everybody has it, then let's think into that. And I will look into that in the project for sure. Yeah. So that's but I wanted also to ask you something about this extra fund that is for field work, and I don't know anyone who dared to apply for it. And I was terrified to apply for it, and there was no one in Slovak institutions and it was almost like, don't do it, like, because if you do, you will seem greedy. There is also some institutional knowledge about, with this grant, use the grant up to the last cent. With those other funding bodies, it's not in a good taste, like leave some thousands away, like for others. So I was terrified to apply for this, even though I felt I really, really need it. So I wanted to ask you, is that a myth? Is that a real deal? And I felt it's just for STEM people and those who move from the US.
Dioneke,
No.
would you mind holding off your answer so we can also get a response from Tessa and Madelena to your question?
Please.
Yeah, I can quickly say that I found the reviews. I agree with you that when you get it there, that you read them in a very different way. But I actually really appreciated this because there was indeed consistency the same, but there were also 3 reviewers gave really. I was actually surprised how extensive the review was. And I really felt that people had really read the proposal very well. And people had a lot of really great suggestions. So like, oh, the applicant could have also thought about this. And some of these things I will definitely take into consideration. So yes, please keep doing this. This was useful. And I also just wanted to say, I forgot to mention before, that I personally felt this entire process was really nice. I felt the interview was a very nice experience. I've had other interviews before that I left feeling horrible about myself. And after this interview, I thought it was just the way the ERC handled it and the kind of sphere, even though it's online, but the atmosphere of the interview, I really thought it was a nice experience. So also wanted to give that feedback to all of you as well, that it was just a nice experience, just to add with that as well.
Yeah, I
Great to
will
hear.
bring a different perspective because I was one of the reserve list winner. So but if enough fundings are available, and so definitely very important to read the review. And this could allow me in the few months that I spent between when I received the review and when after I was called, yes, there are the fundings, because there was a couple of months, I could still sleep very well because I got the maximum. I was the review were excellent, and so I did all what I could do and in the best way possible, and it was written, and I could learn from that. And so please don't stop doing, because it's very important to know, since it's a big work to make the application, to have something that you like. We need the review for a paper to be published, and that's it's like it's really vital to have feedback from people like reviewing you and the project, that say what they think about it. And so very, very important. And I just one more thing I will add, just as Ella said, me too, actually, I did really everything alone. It's not that Italy helped very much. Honestly, it's not only Eastern Europe, Southern Europe doesn't do anything. And there are really very few people in Italy, and especially in anthropology, winning these kind of grants. And I really did everything by myself. And I just received a little help for the budget, but honestly, very, very little. And so it's really something. And I really share what she said concerning the percentage, 10%. The possibility for winning, and that's why I said a bit at the beginning. My first point was apply, because I heard so many people that just pre-selected themselves and just stopped before making the application button. I think we should just not so easy, but it's very important to finalize a project and do it.
Great, thank you very much. Even that kind of demystifies the process, right? Showing that actually you can get it, this kind of giving this support. And just like because you're going to respond, Leona, to Ella's question, I also saw another question on the chat box about the selection of external reviewers. Apostolos asked about how are external reviewers selected. You mentioned that keywords and descriptions are important for assigning the proposal to reviewers in step 1. So he asked a question about the selection of reviewers. I thought that might also be relevant.
Yeah. Do I answer now to the 2 questions? The first of Elisabetta is very quick, because the fact that the extra money should not be claimed is just a myth. The extra money is allocated for fieldwork cost or survey cost, so please use it. It's done, and the panel are aware of the fact that you are totally entitled to request this money. We have lots of projects requesting this additional funding, So please do so. There is absolutely nothing at stake about this. The project will not be better or considered, or it's just that you are entitled to request this money. So this was for Elisabetta. Tessa, you have a follow-up question?
No,
Yeah,
I have an order for question,
okay.
but are you gonna piggyback on that?
Yeah, it's
Please.
exactly about this point about the
Sure.
additional funding, because
Mm.
this is the first time I'm hearing about this. So I did not even know that this was a
Yeah,
possibility.
it's quite new. Yeah.
So is it something that you can only apply for in the proposal, or is it something that I could potentially apply for now, for example?
Unfortunately, it is in the proposal.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, be happy with what you have.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
Anna. Sorry.
how external reviewers are selected?
Um,
They are selected by the panel members themselves. So panel members, maybe even if they are not the specialists in the field explored by that very proposal, they can still tell who are the specialists, and then they nominate these specialists, and then the ERC invite them. Voilà.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And Anna.
Yeah, thank you very much. Lionel, I really appreciate the fact that you're seeking feedback from people who have applied to the ERC, and maybe we can set this precedent as a two-way dialogue between the ERC and EASA and sort of organize a feedback process, if that's helpful to you. I wanted to add a perspective that is different from the three grantees, because I did apply last year and I had an interview and I was rejected. And so I come with feedback about the reviews in the case when the project was not funded. And I have to say that not all the reviews were helpful to me. And certainly there were very important elements which I'm going to take into account. But what worried me a little bit was the fact that, you know, when you focus so much like anthropologists do on qualitative methods, there might be among reviewers people who don't have that much understanding of it. They might be doing quantitative research about the topic or an adjacent topic. But I did get a few very surprising points of review. For example, someone was saying that, you know, the case studies risk self-selecting themselves. And I mean, the self-selection is for surveys, for people who choose to respond and to participate in a survey because the topic speaks more to themselves. But case studies are not self-selected; they are selected by a person according to very clear criteria that were mentioned in my proposal. So I thought, you know, of course, it's great to have an interdisciplinary panel, but especially you as an anthropologist, I think you can have a very positive feedback on, you know, how the panel members and the reviewers look at qualitative methodologies and especially ethnography, and how do we make sure that that is properly understood. And I had other reviews that were surprising to me. You know, somebody was saying, for example, the candidate has this habit of criticizing everything in every strand of literature that she discusses. And I thought, yes, that's called the gap in the literature, you know, addressing the gap in the literature. So it seems to me that maybe we can organize a process of feedback, because there might be issues that we could help the ERC improve, especially when it comes to methodologies that are qualitative. And the other thing that I wanted to say is as well, the risk when you have a groundbreaking project on an emergent topic is also that you don't find appropriate reviewers because the topic has not been dealt with very much yet. So one of the reviewers said the candidate has not shown sufficiently that the phenomenon she wants to analyze is important enough or you know, quantitatively important enough, if it's happening at a large scale that it warrants research, you know. And what do you do with groundbreaking projects that are about topics that people haven't started doing research about very much?
Well, at first, you know that the individual assessment reports are done remotely by panel members and remote reviewers, and we have absolutely no grasp on these. But what we can of course control a bit is the discussion that take place in the panel, and these discussions in general are led by the people who are in the very discipline of the proposal. What you say is, to me, coming from individual remote assessment reports. And then, of course, we ask to a variety of people, and not all of them are aware of the specificities of that very proposal. And the question you ask is just that we have to rely on our panel member. We recruit these panel members because they are generally top-notch specialists in their field. And of course, even if it's a pioneer, a new field, we hope that they are able to select the best possible external reviewers. And we have to rely, it's a question of trust. We have trust in between panel coordinator and panel members. And of course, this does not prevent some individual reviews to look a bit weird or not exactly going to the point. That's also why we tell applicants that what is counting is the panel comment. So the final decision taken by the panel after discussion. In this discussion, in general, the specialists in the field correct the wrong or biased assessment done by non-specialists, and they try to find a balance and to get to the most, well, the nicest possible conclusion about each and every project. But of course, this does not prevent sometimes to make a little, it's not, I would not say a mistake, but for example, you as a panel member, you nominate a specialist in sociology of education for a project in anthropology of education, and it happens that you don't know this as panel member, that this sociology of education is really quantitative. Doing these PISA surveys on 19 countries. And of course, this panel or this remote reviewer may be surprised by a project in anthropology of education. We try to cope in as much as possible with all these aspects, and that's why we have 2 panel meetings with 2 discussions for each and every project passing to step 2. So we really try to avoid mistakes. But of course, sometimes applicants have the feeling that we have done mistakes or that reviews could have been written better, and we fully agree. We do not control everything, but we try our best to get to a consensual panel comment in the end of each discussion that really represent and is faithful to the initial research proposal. Voila.
Perfect, great answer. And I think it's really important to create those 2-way feedback channels. And I really appreciate you asking the feedback of grantees and the participants. Our time is up, but I have one little question on the chat box to Leona, which I want to read. Luisa is asking, I wonder about the funding for each single grant considering inflation. Were there any discussions in Brussels about increasing the budget? Future applications may be able to do less with the same money. That might be a question to Leonard, she said. But like about the kind of any possibility of the increase in the budget.
Yeah, well, for the moment, I think the Scientific Council is more going into the direction that let's stick to the current budget per calls and per proposal, because well, as you know, the EU budget are under stress because we are trying to cope with a new geopolitical situation that is costly. We have seen indeed that there was huge inflation and so on, but the scientific panel is still keen on having still a lot of projects funded, because of course, since the budget is anyway blocked until 2027, it's the end of this framework program. If we increase the funding for each call, it will mean less project funded and a decreased rate of success. For the moment, thanks to the increase in the budget, for example, the last consolidated grant, I think the rate of success was close to 15%. And of course, if we increase the budget per proposal, this will mechanically decrease the rate of success. So we prefer to keep the budget as they are, even if, of course, due to the obvious inflation in some countries or more or less all of them, it is true that you can do just a bit less with what we get, but this is something we do not have control upon, and we try to allow still a high number of PIs to be funded. This at the expense of the taken into account of the inflation.
Yeah, thank you very much. Tessa, Madalena, Ella, do you have anything to add before we close? Thank you very much. Thank you, all of you. Thank you for all our participants. Luckily, our session has been recorded and it will be up on the EASA website soon, hopefully. Thank you very much, Lionel, again. And we are hoping as EASA to have a similar session in person in our Barcelona meeting. So looking forward to seeing you, as like some of you in there. Bye-bye. Enjoy the rest of the day.
I think, Hayal, that we will be
Thanks.
entitled. Yeah, Hayal, let's make Barcelona singing together.
Okay, nice. I promise. I'm a good singer.
Thanks a million to all of you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.